Hey, welcome back everyone, because it's 10:01 now, and we're gonna get started. Our next guest speaker is Mr. Frédéric Guerard. He is the CEO of Grayburn Vision, a public company listed on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. He has tons of experience running private and public companies around the world, so we are delighted to have him speaking with you all the way from Greece, where he is right now. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Guerard.
It's actually amazing the technology works. I'm actually on a boat now sailing, and I have enough Wi-Fi to to talk to you, which is quite nice. Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me again. I think we wanted to cover a few things, and I intend to maybe speak for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then take your questions if you have any, if that's fine with you. I think the topics of interest today were around IPO, not only how, but maybe why would anyone want to go public in a. Then maybe I will cover other ways of getting access to capital, such as merger and acquisitions, business development and licensing, or simply partnering some of your technologies with somebody else. Maybe to start with the IPO, please interrupt me anytime if it's not clear, or if you have any questions. On the IPO, the question is, why would anyone want to become a public company? And the answer is very often it's all about money and access to capital. You've created a startup. It has grown over the years. You've raised a number of rounds of private financing, and either you need to go to some sort of liquidity event for your investors. Most investors in private companies have funds that have a certain life, but very often, it's 5 years, 7 years. Maybe for some, it could be actually a bit shorter. So at some stage, these people want to get some of their money back, and even if your valuation as a private company goes up, their participation in your company is not something they can trade. You can sell it. I mean, there's a market for private company ownership, but certainly it's not as easy or as liquid as being on the stock market, where you can, by pressing a button, it's not that simple if you own a lot of a company, but if you're a simple shareholder, you can buy, you can sell shares. It's actually very simple. So some of these people at some stage want some of their investment back, and then they would ask you to go public. The other reason to go public is, and there are probably many others, but one of the main reasons is the development of your company. You will need a lot more money in the years to come, and the public markets are a very easy way to raise a lot of money. And this is why most of the largest big companies in the world are public companies. There are very few. There are some, but very few large private companies, simply because the capital needs are such that being on the public market allows you to raise capital more easily. So you can actually IPO, and you organize, it's called org up, you find banks, you find lawyers, you find the right team to go public, and then you do your IPO. So the pluses of an IPO are very clear. It's a very good way to raise a lot of money. Your investors can buy more or sell more if they want to realize some profit. During the IPO process, you actually attract different type of investors. So it's enlarging your investor base, and therefore your ability to raise money quickly. And it's also, the day you have new data or new products or any sort of news, you can raise money in a matter of days on the back of such an event. So you can raise more money very, very fast. But it comes with some obligations. You get into this infernal cycle of quarterly reporting. I don't know if you've seen, we are now in a quarterly time. So you have all the 10Qs of all companies being posted and reported by the financial analyst. So you have this quarterly obligation to tell everything that's going on in the company. It's all public. So you cannot hide your plans to your competitors. I mean, you can hide some, but not all. So you need to disclose an awful lot of what you're doing, and therefore it's all out there, and people can see it, monitor it, and keep you accountable to deliver these plans. It requires a lot of governance. You need a board, and that board needs a certain number of independent board members. And you can't do whatever you want in terms of remuneration, in terms of auditing the account. It's all very, very legalized and structured. Your company is public, so you don't control the price. You know, it's suddenly you're exposed to all sorts of macro events. Recently, you've seen the stock market has gone down significantly because of things that are not really in the control of companies. You know, inflation, war in Ukraine, all sorts of things. COVID-19 in a couple of years ago. Those things are not a function of how a company is doing, but this overall sentiment or feeling in the market can significantly impact your price and therefore your ability to raise money or the amount of money you can raise. And that's not something that is in the control of anyone. It becomes out of your control immediately. And then finally, there is something about the cost of being public. So if you are a small startup, you can do an awful lot with the money you have. When you're public, you need to contract insurance, you need lawyers, you need auditors, and that adds up in millions of dollars every year. So there is a huge cost in being public. So those are the inconveniences of being a public company. So that was to cover the IPO, the IPO piece. But there are other ways of raising money, and what most smart companies do is try to raise what they can, but you know, not too much. And then find alternative ways that are not dilutive or that are different. So there is all sort of, you know, funding that is totally not dilutive. So grants are great. Normally, if you can get some, you can actually you know, get money without any sort of obligations. But normally, you have to transact some of your companies to get access to this capital. And this is where partnering and business development comes in. If you're in a company working on a technology, sometimes finding a larger company that would potentially have an interest in your technology and co-developing that technology together, or that product together, or that business together, could make sense. So, for instance, if you're working on a product that needs a vast distribution network for selling this product, you can maybe partner with someone having a distribution network. And this company might actually have a vested interest in investing in your company or get some sort of share of this company. And then that provides you with a reduction of your cost, because you co-develop, you share the cost, and then you can benefit from the distribution network of this other company. You can out-license some of your products. Some of your products may not be in your strategic plan anymore. For some reasons, you may deprioritize some of them, or maybe they are, but maybe there are people out there that are also interested by these products for different geographies. So, for instance, if you're a US-based company, partnering with a China-based company may make a lot of sense. You suddenly have access to the China market, which is very hard to get access to. And this other company, this Chinese company, may give you royalties, may give you milestones, may give you a cash upfront that may help you to develop the product for the US. So there are kind of win-win situations where partnering or business development may make sense. And finally, there is merger and acquisitions. You can certainly be acquired. I mean, this is the most interesting exit for any founder of a company. Someone comes, buys you out, all cash or a mix of cash and shares or stock, depending on the way the deal is constructed. And that is clearly the best way. But you can also acquire technologies that may provide some synergies. And with these technologies or these companies you can acquire, maybe will come some new investors that you don't have, that will expand your investor base, bring the cash of this other company, bring more technologies, and make your company stronger. So I think IPO is of course one way of getting access to capital, and that's the most famous and the most visible way. But there are many other ways, and that's what I wanted to convey with rambling talk on partnering and business development. So I don't know if you have any questions or comments.
So if any of y'all have any questions, please post them in the Q&A section so that Mr. Guerard can answer. I have a question actually. If someone wanted to work, say, in investment banking on IPOs or M&A work, do you what would be a good thing to study in school or in college for people that are looking at college right now?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because you find people with all sorts of backgrounds. You have people with a more finance background from start, but you also have people with business background, engineering background. So I don't think there is one path only, but I think certainly, and so you have medical doctors. In my field, for instance, you have bankers that are actually MDs or PharmDs and decided at some stage that it was not necessarily what they wanted to do. I mean, to be in contact with patients, or they wanted to be more on the financial side, and they are one day deciding to maybe do another training in finance, and then they go into banking. So I don't think there is one path. I think there are multiple paths. I think you need to follow what you are. There are two philosophies. You either follow what you are very good at, or you follow what you are very passionate about. I tend to think following what you are very good at is a good idea, because you need to find a way to differentiate yourself with others, and passion is not always the best way. Maybe it's just being excellent in what you do. So whether you're going to study engineering or science or medicine or finance, I think you can at some stage go and go into banking.
So it looks like we have another question in the chat. What types of companies are the easiest to gain a large IPO?
Sorry, say it again. What type of companies?
What type of companies are the easiest to gain a large IPO?
So, I mean, normally the larger you are as a private company, or the more revenue you have. So when you see these massive IPOs like, Uber or Airbnb or others, normally these are very high numbers because there is an existing business. The investors can really understand the cash flow and or the promise of a cash flow, and it's de-risked because the technology works. So the companies are, I would say, mature and have some sort of metrics that investor can understand very well. These are normally very large IPOs. If you're early stage, or if you're in a risky business like biotech, my industry, where you never know which way a clinical trial is going to go. I mean, it may be positive, maybe negative. I mean, just the way science works. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's just the way. Then, of course, the valuation of these companies come at a significant discount because of the risk. So I would say, if you are very large, country-controlled oil company, you may have a massive IPO. If you're a early stage tech company, it may be smaller.
Another question is, sorry, let me get the Q&A. What's one piece of advice you would give to students who want to run his or her own public company in the future?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. You need to. So it's really hard because, I mean, there are many public company CEOs, but when you make it an objective, you may not necessarily make the best decisions to get there. I don't know if it should be an objective. I mean, it could be an aspiration, but I think your primary objective would be to either create a new business that is making sense, or learn how to run businesses very well. Most CEOs of public companies actually are not the founders. The founders go away at some stage. And normally when you go to public company I mean, there are exceptions, of course. Facebook is one of them, or Tesla, for instance. But normally there is a change in management at some stage. So what most public company CEOs are good business people. You know, they've run businesses in the past, and one day, you know, they get the chance to run a public company instead of running private companies. So my advice would be learn how to run a business. Work for companies that are going to develop you, that are going to give you responsibilities, allow you to take risk, allow you to fail, and learn from your failure, and learn to run the business. The other aspect is you never run a business on your own. You need to become a leader, or a manager first a manager of teams and a leader of teams. So anything related to leadership is very important, and that's one of the key criteria to get these jobs, is to have demonstrated you can run large teams, you can drive performance, but also you're a good person, you're a good leader, someone people want to follow. It's not all about the technical skills, also about the soft skills, and these take longer to acquire than technical skills. So that's what I would say. I would say, run teams, run businesses. And then maybe, if you make the right choices, you will be a public company CEO. I mean, there is no magic about it. I mean, it's not, you don't need to be, superhuman to do it. I mean, it's just a normal job. But I think take the time to build the foundations to get there, and don't rush necessarily, cut corners. You see it very often, these founders, they have a good idea, they want to keep on running their business, and then they fail. And you need to and then these companies bring on board experienced leaders, because this is what needs to be done at that time for the company. So take the time, build your skills, and you'll get there.
I think we have two questions. First, is there any one way to truly gain intrinsic value aside from getting investors?
So gaining intrinsic value outside of, so I didn't hear the question, sorry.
Is there any one way to truly gain intrinsic value aside from getting investors?
Oh yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, if you advance your, I mean, the value is normally a function of your either the promise of future cash flow or your existing cash flow. So that's the best way to actually gain value. Is, I mean, investors are gonna compare the potential investment in your company as opposed to other companies. So if you run a biotech company, for instance, then the same investors will invest into tech companies, food companies, and so on. So, it's how you stack up in terms of your potential for income. So income or being acquired. If there is an exit, if people think you're going to get acquired, then suddenly your value goes up. So the intrinsic value of the company is your ability to tell the story and your ability to demonstrate you can execute on the story, whether it's sales, whether it's research and development, or something else. So that's how you build the value, is by progressing your business one way or the other. Then the investors follow, and that's how your price goes up.
Great. We have, it looks like, one more question. Could you share more about your journey on why or how you took on the path of running a public company?
Yes. So I was working for a large multinational before, and so I had a $6 billion business, and as part of a much larger company, and I was in contact with a lot of entrepreneurs because I was acquiring small companies at that time for that job. And I became very interested to learn about their stories and just to understand what they were doing every day, which was very different to my life. I was in a company where we had a lot of money because it's a large multinational, and we are spending a lot of time working on operations, working on commercial plans, forecasting, but we are never worrying about raising money. You know, the money was coming because of the profits of the company. So I became really interested to understand their stories and how they got where they were. And I started to network with investors as part of me acquiring some of these businesses. And one day I decided that I didn't want to keep doing this work for a larger company. I wanted to go for a smaller team, simply because I had, I think, done enough, and I worked in multiple countries on multiple different businesses. And I thought, you know, it was time for me to do something where I would feel my a bit more important. You know, if you work for a company that has 100,000 employees, I mean, you can be a genius, but you know, for most people like me, you know, you have some impact, but you know, you know, life of the company that has 100,000 employees, where you join a company where you're only 25 or 30. Certainly everyone has a much larger contribution because it's simply, you know, there is no place to hide. It's very small. So I decided to go for a much smaller organization. And when I joined my company, we were private. So there was a plan to go public, but it was a private company. So we only did the IPO 3 years after I joined. So that was not done until I went there. So that was the story. You know, it was for me changing career in some ways, going from running something very large to running something very small, but feeling more in control and more in charge than before.
That looks like our last question. I have one last question for you. In terms of opening an IPO for a company, would you say a good rule of thumb is to hold off on opening an IPO as long as the company is healthy, or until you need the capital? Or do you think you can open an IPO for just because you want to open an IPO, not because it's necessary for the health of the business?
Yeah, right. So there is a rule here, which is you should never look to get money when you need money, because you do it from a position of weakness. And if you do it from a position of weakness, people are going to take advantage of you. So as weird it may seem, you should always look for money when you don't have the need for money. And you need to always, I think, take as much as you can, because you never know what's going to happen in the markets. You know, one day the markets are good and the next day they're not. So that would be my advice, is not to take money when you need it, but to take money when you can. Then when do you do it, and when do you start not to do it? It depends on the feedback you get from investors. So before you IPO, you go through a process called testing the waters. And that process is basically you tell your stories to investors, and you basically ask them, you know, do you have any interest? In case we do it, do you have any interest? And the bankers will work out at what price. And then you may decide to go or not to go, to do it or not to do it. So there is a process to actually test interest before you go public. But the fundamental rule is don't wait until you need the money. Always have more money than you need.
Well, that's amazing. That's great. We have, actually, we have one last question. Sorry. Any advice on finding a good team for a startup company?
That is probably the most difficult thing, is finding people. I think networking, talking to a lot of people is very key. If they're around people you trust, you can ask them if they know people that, you know, are willing to join your company. This is the most difficult thing. It's always the people, because the technology, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. You can always buy a new one, but the team is really what makes the difference. And that is really, really hard. So I think being experienced in a certain sector, knowing what to look for, or surrounding yourself with people that know what to look for. And this is hence so that's another aspect of things. It's even in a startup, you may want to staff your board with people that are not only investors, that people that can help you with these questions. For instance, if you have on your board people who've run similar companies in the past or still running similar companies, they may help you. They may help you to interview, they may help you to select, they may help you to design your company so that you don't make mistakes. And mistakes are really painful. They're painful because they cost a lot of money, and they're painful because you waste an awful lot of time on bad people. If you hire someone that's really not good, it can actually destroy your team, it can destroy your company. And you will spend a lot of time correcting that as opposed to focusing on driving the business. So people matters are really, really important. But you can find people to help you. And you can bring these people on your board.
I know that you alluded to it before, but what are some specific pros and cons of going public?
As I said, the pros are really about the easiness to raise money in the future. So that's the biggest reason why you would do it, is if you are reaching some inflection point and you think your valuation is going to go up, you can raise an awful lot more money than if you are not public, I mean, much faster. But beyond that, it's just a financing tool. There is no reason why you could not stay private. And some very large companies are private, and they are doing extremely well because they have good investors, access to capital, or they make a lot of money and they just self-fund and invest their own money. So that's the only reason why you would do it. It's just a financing tool, but that's it. It's nothing more. So the reasons not to do it is if the timing is wrong. So if for instance you don't expect news in your business for a very long time, public investors don't like that. They want you to go public, and then within 12 to 18 months, they want to see some sort of inflection point. They don't want to sit on this dead money for too long. If they invest in your company at whatever $10 a share, they want to see the stock going to $20 a share in 18 months. And if you don't have any news and nothing planned, it's unlikely to happen. That your price will go up. So the timing may be a reason why you don't do it. And then I said before, the cost as well. It's very cumbersome. You need a board. You need directors and officers insurance. This is now millions of dollars every year. You need auditors for your accounts. They're very expensive. They're kind of Ernst & Young and PwC type of people. They're very expensive. So there are multiple reasons why you would not do it. But all in all, big or promising companies go public because it has more benefits than drawbacks, and that's why we try to do it.
Well, excellent. Excellent. It looks like we don't have any more questions. Give it a last couple seconds or a minute to see if anyone has any more. So it looks like we're done with the Q&A session. I want to thank Mr. Guerard for coming and spending some time when he's out in Greece speaking to us. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
No, you're most welcome. I'm actually surprised the technology works, but it's you can work from anywhere now. This is really really interesting. No, thank you very much for inviting me, and I wish you a very successful end of the day. And thank you very much.
One fun question on my side. It's just a fun question. Is Greece worth sailing to?
Where I can show you. Look at this. It's actually quite nice. We're sailing around islands south of Corfu. That's what we're doing now. So that's why I am.
Well, it sounds perfectly lovely.
Yes. Listen, thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy your vacation. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye.